Welcome back. Critical race theory is making its way into our after-school programs as one Brooklyn school is calling for all 9th and 10th graders who, quote, identify as white to meet for an anti-racism club. It's a, quote, space to talk about white fragility and white privilege without triggering trauma in non-white folks or placing a burden on people of color to teach us about them. Here's what Candace Owens told me on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday.
I truly believe that it's time for us to pull our kids out of school. They're trying to fuel race issues in this country. They're trying to teach this Marxist ideology. These kids are not learning science, not learning mathematics. They're learning how to hate white people. They're learning how to hate their country. And this is problematic for the future. What they're trying to do is guarantee that they have an ignorant group of people that vote based on emotion. This is a Democrat long-term strategy, and it's finally coming into fruition.
Joining me right now to talk more about it is Christian Walker, social media commentator, and Kristin Tate, Young Americans for Liberty analyst. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Your reaction to what's going on in schools right now, Kristin?
Well, I mean, of course, we should all actively... Oh, go ahead, Christian.
Kristin Tate.
Sorry, we have similar names.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead, Christian. Christian Walker, go ahead.
I just think, placing people into a box based on their skin color and telling them that they should feel guilty, that's the exact behavior that we overcame after Jim Crow. We've moved past this as a country, and it feels as though this is an effort to refuel racial tension. It's not a solution.
And Kristin Tate, it feels to me that it's an assumption that all of these kids are racists before they utter a word out of their mouths about anything.
Exactly right. And I mean, we should all be fighting racism wherever it exists, but that's not the goal of critical race theory. CRT is just this divisive worldview that indoctrinates students to believe that no matter what they succeed at or don't succeed at isn't because of how hard they work, but by the color of their skin. And this is an extremely demoralizing worldview, especially for students of color who are being told that all of our institutions are biased and working against their own best interests. So parents need to start fighting back against this and demanding that instead of busying themselves pushing this left-wing indoctrination, educators work on actually fixing basic education, because in spite of record funding, our schools are producing pathetic results. I mean, consider that in New York City, 140 schools have at least one grade with a 90% state exam failure rate. It's pathetic, and our students are being failed.
I think this is a really important point. And Christian Walker, the problem is we're teaching this kind of stuff, and we're not teaching history. We're not teaching science. We're not, I mean, look at what Kristin just pointed to in terms of the performance of our schools.
Yes, it's being weaponized against our children, and especially white kids right now, teaching them that they are guilty for something that their ancestors did. And I know I have a lot of white friends whose ancestors weren't even in the country during the time of slavery or Jim Crow. So this is a dangerous thing for our children to be learning, and it especially sets a dangerous precedent moving forward for future generations. We should be teaching children that they are overcomers and that they are victors, not victims to their skin color.
So what should be done about it at this point? I mean, we've got billions of dollars going to the schools right now in this latest package, spending package, Kristin, and we're not even seeing all schools open.
That's exactly right. Well, parents are starting to wake up to what's going on, and they're increasingly pulling their kids out of the public schools. Another thing that I think should be mentioned is that our largest geopolitical threat, which is, of course, China, is developing an entire generation of highly skilled students to make China the #1 world power. They have launched what they call the Strong Base Plan, which incentivizes elite students to study subjects that will allow China to progress in its technology and science development. How is the U.S. going to compete on the world stage when our educators are focused on this indoctrination that completely obscures what should be the point of an education? I mean, only 1/3 of U.S. 8th graders are proficient in math. An abysmal 15% of American high school students know basic history. We now have a generation of American students that have no idea when or why the country was founded, and we cannot rely on a generation to defend our liberties and freedoms if they don't even understand those liberties and freedoms in the first place.
I'm glad you mentioned China, because another angle on this is that it's not enough to just denounce the CCP and its behavior as bad, which we will be doing later on in the week. You have to also believe that the free world is superior. And how can you believe that the free world is superior when all you're talking about is systemic racism and how bad America is right now? Final word, Christian Walker.
Kristin made an excellent point, and I can promise you kids in China are not studying gender studies or how to hate white people. We should be teaching our children subjects that arm them with the skills to fight for our freedoms moving forward. You know, Western civilization is under attack as a whole, and critical race theory only continues to undermine it.
All right, we will leave it there. Christian and Kristin, good to see you both. Thank you so much. We will take a break. When we come back, Stephen Miller